Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast on YouTube. My name is Carey Nieuwhof, and my goal is to help you lead like never before. So what I do every week is I sit down with world-class leaders and church leaders, business leaders, and I talk to them about what made them who they are and try to have the conversation with them that you would have if you got to sit down for lunch with them or have dinner with them or really got to spend some time with them. So we go into the backstory and we explore what made them who they are and some of the principles they've learned along the way. So if you enjoy this episode, I would love for you to like it, to subscribe, and also to share it with your friends. And in the meantime, here's today's episode. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I heard you on my wife's podcast, the one she does with Dr. Rob Meter, our longtime friend, and Smart Family podcast. I was kind of mesmerized. What you were sharing made me wish that our kids are in their 20s. I wish I was like 30 again and I had my kids back and that I could apply some of the techniques that you talked about. But I also learned that a lot of what you do is you coach leaders on sort of how to treat, because everybody's, top problem is people problems. So we're going to talk about people problems today. What are the similarities, let's start here, between great parenting techniques and great leadership techniques?
Well, I guess the most obvious one is that when you're a parent, you're a leader, right? So you're, and it's, what's interesting as parents is you're not actually a parent. You're actually a substitute frontal lobe, right? So your job is to organize, motivate, switch, take perspective, inhibit, all of those important things. So to do that in a way while helping the person feel psychologically safe, loved, cared about, intact, and well integrated is a pretty important skill. And so that is certainly something that applies across the board.
What are the typical leadership problems? You do a lot of work with companies. You walk into a company. I'll give you the top 3 to 5 things that CEOs, leaders call you about all the time. It's like, I can't solve this. Help me out, Jennifer. What would that list be, your frequent flyers?
Top of the list would be like relationship stuff, just reacting to each other, emotional issues, having an opinion and a feeling about something and not being able to adequately communicate it and resolve it. So that's probably one of the big ones. People are messy. We're messy. There's always layers, right? There's childhood stuff. There's what are called implicit and explicit memories. So what happens is prior to the age of 7, the hardware laid down in the brain for long-term memory isn't there yet. So everything that happens to us prior to the age of 7 is experienced and logged and located in the limbic brain, the part of the brain that reacts, freaks out. So we're all kind of walking around, no matter how successful we are, no matter how intelligent we are, we're walking around with the programming of a 7-year-old, basically.
So, that explains my life. Thank you.
It makes it very difficult because we end up reacting a lot more than we think we do versus responding. And then it's all incredibly layered. So every person comes into every single interaction with a different experience. And that's called intersubjective. That's why you can work with one person and be like, I love that guy, or I love that, she's amazing, and have such a good, there's good synchronicity, there's good integration, you're feeling great. Somebody else, it feels like there's a conflict. And that's because it's intersubjective. We experience reality together, right? Versus there being an actual reality.
Okay, you unpack so much in that like 1 minute answer. I gotta drill down on that. I think, the one thing that pops into my mind is we kind of forget as leaders that we're hiring human beings. We're not hiring a skill set, and these are people with pasts, and some of them are easier pasts than other. And okay, say more about like before 7 years old, we don't have any long-term what? Like just explain that again. Sorry, I'm not a doctor.
Okay, so the neurological hardware in your brain, and basically everything about us is programmed, right? And some of it's genetically programmed. Sometimes it's experience. It's put in there from our parents. We're just a product of programming, basically. Now, the good news is you can reprogram. You don't have to live with these programs necessarily. You can change them, which is one of the really exciting things. So prior to the age of about 7, anything that happens to us, the neurological hardware isn't there. So for most of us, we have very few fragmented memories of being, like, can you remember being 3 or 4?
Oh yeah, I do.
Do you
actually.
have like and what do you remember what your first memory is of being like 3 or 4 or even
probably
2?
my first memory. It was actually a frightening memory. We lived on a farm, and there were 2 houses on the farm. The house where me and my parents lived, and then my grandparents, which was like, I don't know, 200 feet away or something. And it was safe. It was from the road. So I was walking from the farmhouse where we lived to my grandparents' house, and we had a dog behind a cage. So this is a good case study for you. You can psychoanalyze me right here. And the dog started barking at me. And I remember being terrified. And to this day, I have an adverse reaction to dogs. I'm not a pet person. And
That
I
is
trace
such
it
a
back to
perfect
that. It's
example.
irrational.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
well,
so
it's
that's my
yeah.
earliest childhood memory.
Okay, well, thank
I
you
was
for
probably
sharing that, 'cause
2.
that's a perfect one, because that's an example of why that got remembered, right? There's no way that would have been remembered in your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that is rational. That was a threat. How old did you say you were?
We moved from the farm when I was 3, so I was probably 2 or 3.
So little tiny guy, right? Walking somewhere, and then the scary, terrifying event happened, which the limbic system is responsible for the security system of the brain. And it doesn't care why things are happening. It just errs on the side of caution and decides that it's a threat, right? And you're in a moment where it's fight, flight, or freeze, and that takes over. So that experience got logged. It's sort of like, think of it as an emotional tattoo. It got tattooed into your brain.
Yep.
That's kind of what happened. And so now it generalizes. So that generalized to cages, dogs, farms, like who knows? It's our brain. Our anxiety loves us dearly. It really does. And it's just trying to do the best job possible and keep us safe. And so what it does is it just casts a little bit of a wider net. Well, if that was scary and that's a little bit like that, I better be scared of this too, essentially.
Right.
And so your brain remembered that, and it's doing the best job that it can to keep you safe, so you never are exposed to a situation like that again, which it's now generalized to pets, right?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
we're not a
programmed.
pet family. My kids were devastated. I also have asthma, so I mean, there's that. But
There's that. That's
so
important.
there's that. So that would have been a deal breaker. And actually, they now have dogs, and like I like their dogs, and they're theoretically hypoallergenic, and I can deal with their dogs. But it's really interesting. So never talked about this with anybody. My family thinks it's ridiculous, but like when we would go to visit good friends, I cannot remember people's dogs' pets' names. Like I don't remember. So we'd go in to see friends we see all the time, and I'm like, "Hello, dog." Like that's basically it. I knew, and I can remember 1,000 people's names, but like it almost went to that level where I just categorically forget pet names.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Every time we have a memory like this and we avoid something, the limbic brain goes, damn, I'm good. I did a really good job. He's still alive because he doesn't like dogs. He's still alive because he doesn't remember the name of dogs. And it just thinks it's doing a fantastic job. Now, what's so interesting that this is a dog conversation, because when I work with kids or I work with adults around trauma, which that was, even though you were only 2 or 3, you didn't get attacked, but it was a traumatic memory and your brain stored it as such, right? So when I talk to people about anxiety, I give them the example that their anxiety is actually like a dog. It's like a big, goofy guard dog that thinks, okay, you've hired me to do a job. I'm going to be so good. You are never going to regret hiring me. I'm going to be the best guard dog ever. And at first, the dog just looks at scary people outside and barks. And then the people keep walking. And then the dog looks at you and goes, that worked. Wow, my person's still here. I'm good. So you know what? I'm going to bark at everyone outside just to be safe. And then, oh, he's still here. I'm doing a great job. Now the dog goes, oh, you know what? I'm going to bark at everyone near my person. You know what? Forget that. I'm just going to sit on my person's chest and lick his whole face, and he will be so safe. And yes, I guess you'd be safe, but you'd have an 85-pound dog on your chest that won't let you do anything, right? So anxiety is this amazing self-preservatory emotion that gets a very bad rap because people are always saying, oh, anxiety is bad. You got to get rid of it. No, you need anxiety. If you don't have anxiety, you're going to walk across the street without looking. You're going to have arguments with people. So it's about learning to respect the anxiety as self-preservatory, know that it's there, but you want to train the dog. We don't want to get rid of the dog. You might, but most people don't want to get rid of the dog. They just want the dog to lie in their dog bed, fully trained and only coming out when it's absolutely necessary. So back to our original conversation, traumatic things are usually either very exciting things or traumatic things are what are stored in the brain prior to the age of 7. After 7, 8, 9, you can usually have even more memories that are just kind of incidental contextual memories. But prior to that, think of them as like an emotional tattoo. And that program runs and interferes in our adult daily life without us even realizing it. And your dog example is perfect.
And these are the people we hire. These are the people we work with. These are the people we lead. And we all think of ourselves as rational people who make rational decisions. Is some of what you're talking about before the age of 7, my wife's work, Tony, who you've met, is working through the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is like a massive book. But is it sort of related to that? Can you explain that a little bit? Like how your body remembers what your brain forgets?
Yeah, absolutely. So any kind of upsets, trauma, important information gets stored in the body, right? It gets literally physically stored in your body. Trauma is a really good example. And that's why as an adult, rational person, you can still not like pets or still not remember the name of pets or still not want a pet, right? There's a part of you going, that's ridiculous. I don't know why I have that, but your body remembers, right? That's really important. So knowing that it's a program and it's a program that you can challenge, it's a program that you can change. The brain is neuroplastic. You can actually rewrite programs. You're the coder. You can change the program in your brain. You just have to know that it's there. And so as people come to us, we all have this. You won't find a person that doesn't have this. This is all of us, right? This is how the brain actually works. They are bringing to the room, to the office, to the meeting room, to the boardroom, successes, failures, childhood stuff, whether they were bullied, whether they're the bully, how they were parented. All that stuff is in the boardroom or in the meeting room with you, and that's why it gets messy, right? That's the complicated part. And so creating emotional safety, knowing that things are messy, knowing that we're all running on different programs that we just basically have to integrate and sync up. That's when really good moments happen. That's when change happens. That's when relationships happen. And that's when growth happens as a company, but also as an individual.
Wow. Okay. So that's good to know. We just interviewed Amy Edmondson as well. She spent her life working on psychological safety, right? Creating a psychologically safe workplace. But you mentioned emotional safety. So, the CEO calls you, says, I cannot get along with my VP. Senior pastor says, like, my board and I, we're like cats and dogs, like, pets notwithstanding. We're just not in a good place, or just, I keep firing people, or I just can't get along with whatever. How do you even as a leader, because you're not a counselor, like you have, degrees in counseling. I went to seminary, I went to law school, I went to business school. I went to seminary. Like I'm not prepared for this. How do you even begin to advise leaders on how to deal with the emotional complexity that is your team?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's like layers to the answer of that question. So
we got time.
One thing, and this is a really important part for all of us, whether you're the CEO and it's your company or you're the delivery guy, when you are in a position of being a victim, you are powerless. When you're in a position of being a student and a learner, now you have power. And now you're a really good example to other people, right? You don't have to have the answers. Nobody does. You're going to figure it out together. And so what you want to be able to constantly be doing is tuning in to your own integrity. So I'm sure you know about brain-heart coherence. Does that sound familiar?
No, I don't. So go ahead, fill me in.
The heart, this is going to be a juicy interview. So the heart actually has neurons in it. It actually has brain cells. It's a brain.
What? Okay, I did not know this.
There are 40,000 brain cells, neurons in your heart and your brain and actually your gut. Now that changes the conversation with gut feelings, right? And so what happens is the heart can inform the head. So you said something interesting a minute ago. You said we all think of ourselves as rational people, particularly if you're a leader. None of us are rational people. Humans are not rational. Everything gets filtered through the limbic system first and then goes to the prefrontal cortex. So just for listeners, just to kind of do a little quick moment on the brain, the limbic brain is the part of the brain that's the security system of the brain. Is this safe or not? Am I in danger or not? Do I need to fight? Do I need to run? Do I need to freeze? Do I need to fight back? What do I need to do? That is not a conscious decision. That is not a thought-based decision. That is an adrenaline-based, time-sensitive reaction. I'm going to fight back. I'm going to argue. I'm going to run. That bookshelf is going to fall on me. I better get out of the way. That's what that part of the brain is set up for. And thousands of years ago, when we lived out in the open and there were animals attacking us, and it was a very different world, that was a very important part of our survival, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't have it. But that is going off all the time now, and we don't need it. We aren't in fight or flight danger most of the time, but our limbic system does not know that. So the minute you clench up, the minute your heart starts racing, the minute you feel that twist in your gut or your face gets flushed, your brain doesn't know it's your VP that you're not getting along with, or your teenager that's yelling at you, you're so mean, I hate you. It thinks it's a tiger, it's an animal, it's something's going to attack you. Why are you still standing there? Right? So that it becomes a reaction instead of a response. Now, the prefrontal lobe or the frontal lobe, the job of that part of your brain is to organize, inhibit, regulate, take perspective, decide whether you're in danger or not, so that we can have a reaction, so we can have a response, to the situation instead of a reaction to the situation. And learning how to control that is key.
Right. Okay. And there are leaders listening who would say, yeah, I'm a little bit out of control in that. I get emotional. I get upset in meetings. I storm out. And you know what? When you're the senior leader, you have more permission to do that than if you're at the bottom of the food chain, so to speak, right? If you're an entry level first month on the job, you're not storming out of meetings. But if you're a founder, if you're the person with some power, that also buys you a level of insulation, which I've always tried to be very respectful of. Like, oh my goodness, I can't be the toddler here. I have to be the adult. But you're leading people like, okay, so let's say you get into a really inflamed situation in a meeting, and we've had Pat Lencioni on. Pat will tell you need animated debate. You need animated conversation to make your meetings work. But how do you, if somebody is consistently triggered or angry or upset, or you got that board member who's like off the rails every meeting and has this one issue they just don't seem to respond to, how do you begin to approach that as a leader? Like, it's complicated. It's some of the most difficult stuff we do.
Yeah, it is. And it goes back to everything we were just saying too. So step one is you recognize that it's a program running, right? And you try to actually identify that it's a program, and know inside that it's probably a program running that from when you were 7 years old. And then you actually ground yourself and center yourself, which we'll talk about in a moment. You also have to know that when you're in a position of power, when you're the leader, people aren't going to challenge you in a normal way. You're not going to get that, what I call emotional sonar back. People are going to be like, but they're thinking all kinds of other things, right?
Yeah. When they go home, they're telling people what an idiot you are, but in public,
Right. Well, and what happens too is I call it CEO syndrome. Like, you can go home and sort of be in that position. Well, people don't challenge me, and people do what I say, and and you go home, and it's like your teenager's like not having it. Your wife or your husband's not having it, and it's like, what do you do, right? So it really comes back to the reason I brought up brain-heart coherence is that the brain and the heart have to agree. When the brain and the heart agree and you're in alignment, you will feel strong. You will feel in control in a good way, not a controlling way, but an in control way. You will feel integrated emotionally, and now you're a leader, right? Because now you are responding to people from a place of love, and we'll talk about that because it sounds corny, but it's really important, versus fear. Whenever you are responding based on fear, and that's why you can have a passionate, wonderful conversation with people, but no one's coming from a place of fear. They're coming from a place of, wow, this is amazing, but what about this and what about that? No, we need this. But if it's coming from this place being very grounded in love for each other, love for the company, love for what you're doing, love for what you're bringing to the planet, it's all going to go very differently. If it's coming from a place of control, no one's listening to me, I'm losing control of this meeting, this happened yesterday with blah, 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 and this happened this morning with my teenager. And so if we're trying to control conditions, now you're in trouble. Because you cannot control conditions. You can only control your response to conditions. That's the only thing you ever have control of, really.
The integration piece is fascinating to me. And, as a former pastor, I have a bias in that area, and as a person of faith, but that almost sounds spiritual. It almost sounds like, a lot of what I've been working on in my adult life is to try to bring my life, my beliefs, and my behaviors into line with each other, not from a behavior modification standpoint. But, there's that ancient text in the Hebrew Bible that's out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And
Yes.
I really think there's something to that. Is there so you're talking about like a lining up of
Yep.
the heart and the mind to well, as Kierkegaard would say, to will one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a religious thing or even such an intensely spiritual thing. You can line up with the best version of yourself. Do I like myself in this moment? Right? And our body talks to us all the time. So if you react in a meeting or you interact with someone and deep down it's coming from a place of fear, you're not in your best moment. You're not being the best leader in that moment. First of all, there's nothing wrong with that because it's those moments where you learn to check that and go, I'm off the road there. I don't really love how I felt in that moment. I'm going to bring myself back. People think of negative emotions as being bad things. They're not. That's your emotional GPS. When you feel like that, it's because you're off the road. You're out of alignment with your best self. And you think it's because you hate that other VP, or you think it's because that person is, whatever, challenging you. But no, what you're really disagreeing with is between you and you. That's the really important part. So how you lead is by really, truly lining up and leading yourself so that from moment to moment, you are constantly checking, am I integrated here? Am I in brain-heart coherence? Do I like who I am in this moment? And what's really interesting is there's a big difference between, let's say, being kind and being nice. Good leaders know this, right? Sometimes being kind means being really tough on somebody, holding someone accountable, firing someone, challenging someone. But if you do that because I'm going to make that person feel bad, they're going to be sorry they ever messed with me. Now that's a mess for that person. It's a mess for you. You're going to take that mess home. Trust me. But when it's lined up, when it's brain-heart coherent, it'll be like you'll deliver that message from a very different place. That person will actually learn a lesson. They may not integrate it at that moment, go on and maybe hear it from someone else and eventually make changes on their own, right? So it's really about being aware of when you're in and out of your own integrity. And when you're in a position of power, it is a really important job. People look up to you. You matter to people. The company matters to people. They're looking to you as a very important figure in their lives, which can seem very daunting, but it's very, very important. So as corny as it sounds, it's lining up with love, not fear.
No, that's not corny at all. And, I like to think about etymology. I'm an amateur in that. But integrity actually is connected deeply to integration, right? So what you're talking about here is the integration of the heart and the mind. I'm going to get this wrong because being married to a pharmacist and a lawyer, none of her medical knowledge has rubbed off in me in decades. Okay. So I'm like, I'm going to get this wrong, but you were suggesting, terms notwithstanding, that the heart actually has not brain tissue, but like mnemonic structure, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What else I'm sure this could be its own podcast, but I'd never heard that before. So what are you saying? Your heart thinks?
Yes.
What are you saying?
Yeah, the heart informs the head. There's an amazing institution called Heart Math, which I encourage everyone to look into, that has done incredible studies about the heart and the heart-brain connection. That's why, and I would probably also get this wrong, but I remember they were doing, I think it was this organization, it might have been another, were doing studies on where people feel emotions. And they had people in an MRI machine, and they invited a group of monks to be in this MRI machine to find out where love is, to find out where that lights up in the brain. And the monks were all laughing because they're like, they know where you're going to find love. You're not going to find it here. You're going to find it here, right? That's why universally, everyone feels love here. And when you panic, you feel it in your gut. You feel it in your stomach. There's that drop, right? So the most difficult part, and this is such a broad conversation, but it's so important to pull it all together when you're a leader, is that we live in a culture where, our culture particularly, we don't want to feel. We're told not to feel. We're parented not to feel. Oh, you're upset? Here's an iPad. Oh, you didn't get that? Let me buy you something. Right? So we're in a culture where if we feel what we call negative emotions, which are not even negative, they're information. We want to drink something so we don't feel it. We want to make someone else feel bad so we don't feel it. We want to buy something. We want to run away. We want to escape from that emotion, but it will chase you, just like that dog analogy I gave you, right? If you ignore these important, what we call negative emotions, they'll keep following you. They're going to find you. And so lots of leaders have all kinds of, like, you can have heart issues, you can have stress and anxiety. You don't even know why, because you're carrying all of this energy from underneath you all the way up. And if you're not feeling that and releasing it, then you're going to end up not feeling well, and you're not going to be a great leader, right? So because we've been parented this way, and we parent our children this way, we're taught to fear emotion and avoid it. And it is bad. Being angry is bad. Being sad is bad. Being anxious is sad. No, it's information. So think of it as your GPS. You're driving along on the road, right? You behave in a way that you don't like, or you're not following your true self, or you're out of integrity, or whatever it is, you're going off the road. Then you're going to hit that rumble strip. Your whole body's going to go, right? And you're going to think, oh, that's because of my anxiety. Oh, that's because of anger. And then you don't follow it. You're going to end up off the road. You use that negative stuff to go, oh, okay, all right, I got it. I got to get back on the road here. I got to get back on the road. And that's by paying attention to that GPS system, actually feeling your emotions. To get out of something, you got to get into something. And that's basically how it works. To heal it, you got to feel it. That's just how we are.
Well, that's good to know. I want to get into the Comm Technique, because I think this leads there. But a little interesting trivia, not that most people would know it, and some people listening will know this better than me. One of the challenges in biblical interpretation is the seat of the emotions was actually the head, and thinking was the heart in ancient terms. And when Jesus was said to have had compassion, the word literally means bowels, that he felt it in his bowels. So it's really interesting how the ancients looked at that and saw a connection between the gut, the heart, and the mind that we've kind of separated out. It's just really fascinating.
Yep.
Anyway.
And you will see that in all kinds of readings and all kinds of ancient cultures, all kinds of religions. It's a knowing, it's an archetype. It's familiar to us somewhere. You see it in films and movies and books and in the hero's journey. It's something that we just know. We just have gotten so off track sometimes, and so confused and so afraid of our feelings, that we've lost, we don't know how to read them properly. And it's essential to being a good human, a good leader, a good parent, and actually to being happy as well. So yeah, let's get into the Comm Technique, because this will actually answer a lot of the first part of our questions of how do you manage these things.
Yeah. So what is the Comm Technique? And by the way, that's an acronym, CALM. So could you explain that for us? You're best known probably, I think, or one of the things you're most known for is the Comm Technique.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a way of deep listening, using language, using compassion and empathy literally as medicine, to soothe someone, to calm someone down, and to bring both participants in the conversation into brain-heart coherence. So I'll give you a tiny bit of history here. This is now going back like 30 years, when I finished my undergraduate degree in psychology, I knew what I wanted to do, but I also wanted to get out there and do some real work before going back to graduate school and going on in my studies. And I ended up signing up to work at this group home. So this is a group home for street kids. So these were kids who had all been sexually abused, physically abused, deeply traumatized, sexually trafficked. They were 11 to 16 years old, if you can imagine. So I came in as a, brand new staff member, ready to do my, figure out what to do here. And these kids, they could smell fear. I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrified. It was all over my face. They were really scary. They were quite behavioral. And we were trained in this group home to be very military, on top of these kids. Don't turn your back. They'll take advantage of you, kind of thing. And don't be soft with them. They'll see that you're weak. And this was really how we were trained. And then even back then, that did not sit with me. That my gut, my brain, and my heart were not in agreement with that. These are babies. These are children who'd been through terrible things. They needed love. They needed someone to actually see them. So when it was nighttime and it was time to put them to bed, and the makeup came off, and the jammies came on, and the teddy bears came out, they turned back into children who just wanted to be seen and loved and to matter. And so I balked all the rules, and I would do their bedtimes, and I would sit on their beds, and I would rub their backs, and I would tell them bedtime stories, and I would sing them lullabies. And these children would, I'm going to cry just thinking about it, would weep.
Wow.
And I would sometimes cry because I thought, oh my God, where was I when I was 11 and 12? I was home in my house with my parents sleeping at the end of the hall in their bedroom, and my dog on the foot of my bed. And these are children who just had nothing. But here's what I noticed. The next day, when it was time for me to get those kids to do what I needed them to do, they were much more likely to do it for me. So now I had compliance. Now I had trust. Now I had them behaving in a way because we had a symbiotic, integrated, trusting relationship. This is all leadership stuff here, right? So now it was interesting because the other staff were like, oh, she's a bleeding heart. Those kids are going to walk all over her. She's going to see this is going to backfire. So they're going to take advantage of her, blah, blah, blah. None of that happened, by the way. And because I had trust and compliance, I could actually set limits with these kids. And it was interpreted as a loving limit, not an injury, right? And this goes back to being kind versus being nice, right? When you're nice, oh, it's okay, I'll do it. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. That's not good for you. You're going to be out of alignment. It's not even good for the other person who's now taking advantage of you and on some level isn't going to feel good about that either. Kind is, hey, I get it, but I'm not doing that for you. You need to do it. It's important for you to do it and just know it, right? So I did not get taken advantage of with these kids. It was actually amazing. And there was one child who had only been there a couple of weeks. She was, going to a new setting. It was actually called a receiving home. Kids were only there for a short time. And she was one of the toughest kids. We'd had meetings for weeks about this kid coming into the setting. And I can see this as clear as day. She was walking down the sidewalk. She was about to put her hand on the door handle of the car and open it. And she paused. She came running back up the sidewalk. She put her hands on my cheeks. She looked deep into my eyes and she said, I just want to remember this face, the face of someone who actually cared about me. That was a profound moment for me. And I'm grateful to her because that was a teaching moment. And that's the moment I knew, okay, what is happening? I need to understand this. Why don't we all do this? Why don't we all know this? And I devoted the next, I'm still every day. This is a living, breathing model, the connected parenting model. And, I knew it was medicine. And I went back and I trained in self-psychology. I developed my own kind of practice. And this is where the Comm Technique comes in. So I knew profoundly that biochemically what was happening was significant when you have a moment of connection like that. And that is where real change happens. That's where real growth happens. That's where mutual respect happens. And that's, if you can have that happening in your whole company, you will have everyone lined up with what's best for everyone else in the company and also for the company. And will it get messy in between? Of course it will. But if everyone's working on alignment, then you're going to get somewhere. And it's a beautiful place to work. And then you feel lovely where you are. And then anyway, that's a whole other thing. So here's the Comm Technique. There are 4 things that you're going to do. You're going to connect. You're going to match the affect. You're going to listen and choose your words. And the M stands for mirroring. So biochemically, when we listen to another person, we are what's called mirroring. And most of us think we know what that is. It is not saying things like, I understand, this must be very difficult for you. That is active listening, empathic listening, or effective listening. And that is very different. It has to go through the language center to get processed and hits the limbic system later. Mirroring, or the Comm Technique, which is my version of mirroring, actually bypasses the language center, hitting you right in the heart, really giving this moment of like complete warmth and understanding. And now you're going to have a very different conversation with someone. So the good news is we're all pretty good at this. All of us know how to mirror with a baby. Nobody would look at a baby and go, hey, how are things going? Like, we look at a baby and go, oh my goodness, look at you, look at that. We intuitively know what to do. And when, as an adult or caregiver, we are interacting with our baby that way, or any baby that way, the mirror neuron cells in the brain are getting excited and they're releasing opiates, endorphins, and a very powerful hormone called neurotransmitter called oxytocin. Oxytocin is also known as the love drug or the tend and befriend hormone. It's part of what's called the here and now chemicals, serotonin, oxytocin. Those are neurotransmitters and hormones that release in the body that bring closeness and connection. I don't care what you're doing on this planet. We are social beings and we are only good when we are connected to other social people and when we're in harmony with those relationships. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be out of harmony sometimes and you have to do some tough things and make some tough decisions. But those tough decisions should be for the best for you, but also for that other person. And then you're lined up with love and then you're good, right? So oxytocin then releases, and now you have trust and compliance. So I'll give you an example. Years ago, Did you want to ask a question? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say too, just so listeners who are trying to take notes, we will have the Comm Technique and the alliteration spelled out in the show notes for people and link to resources. Yeah.
I'm going to walk you through an example too in a second.
Okay, great.
Let's go. You have it. And then we could actually do one, which could actually be fun. We could like role play it and try it. So here's the thing. I remember years ago, I worked for the Toronto District School Board as a social worker, and I'm part of the trauma team there. And I was working in this school, and I didn't have my own parking spot because we never did. And we had to block people in, and that had to get negotiated. So I ended up asking this teacher, is it okay if I block your car? I've got to go deal with something. And she's like, okay, fine. But I have an appointment with a specialist at 11 o'clock. You need to move your car by 11. I said, no problem. So I go back in. I deal with this kid who said he had a gun in his backpack. He was not in the school that I was in. He was at a different school. So his school is now on lockdown. I'm dealing with the police. I'm trying to talk to this kid. I'm talking to the principal. I'm managing this whole situation. And of course, at 11 o'clock, I hear, Jennifer Kolari, please move your car. Jennifer Kolari, can you please move your car? I can't move my car yet. It's probably 10 or 15 minutes before I can move my car. I come downstairs. This woman is beside herself. She is furious. How dare you? I told you I had a specialist appointment, blah, blah, blah. Now, freeze moment. I can react to her or I can respond to her. I have a moment in time where I can make a quick decision about what I want to do. I decided to respond to her, and I used the mirroring technique, the Comm Technique in that moment. So I looked at her and I said, you know what? You did. You told me you had a specialist appointment. We sat here and made a whole plan about how my car was going to be gone. Not only that, it's 10 minutes past when my car should be gone. So do you see what's happening? She doesn't have to argue with me. She doesn't have to explain it to me. I am limbically sending a message back, neurologically, chemically. I get it. Okay. I'm not being defensive in that moment. I just reflect back that I get it. I have not agreed with her. I just echoed back what she was feeling. I visited her planet. I don't have to stay. I don't have to pack a bag and live there. I just have to look around. Okay. Non-defensiveness is actually the key here. And it's a really difficult thing to do, but it is. It will give you such strength. It will give you a superpower. It really will. As will this technique. As I'm doing this, you could see her. She's like, she's trying to stay mad, but she can't because I am biochemically calming her down. Oxytocin is now flowing, taking her out of fight or flight, putting her into an oxytocin-based response instead of an adrenaline-based, cortisol-based reaction. She is now calming down. Did we have a hug? No. She drove away, kind of ticked off. I drove away. But if I'd gotten in an argument with her, let's say I reacted to her. How dare you? Do you know what I just had to be? Do you know what I was just doing for the last hour? What am I supposed to say? Hold on to your gun while I, whatever, right? I can't, I'm the school social worker. I can't get in a fight with someone in the parking lot. I can't. And I would have been out of integrity and I wouldn't have felt good about myself and she wouldn't have learned anything anyway. I chose to respond to her. I chose to line up with love in that moment, not fear. Drove home half the way going, I wouldn't want to be her teacher, blah, blah, blah in my head. And then, but I didn't have to go, oh my God, did I really say that? Did I really say that to her on the school social? I didn't have to regret anything that I said because I was in alignment that whole time, right?
So was that the whole interaction? You just basically mirrored back like, you're right and it's worse. And
well, I never said you're right. I said,
okay.
I totally get it. According to what you and I agreed upon, my car is still here and you have a specialist appointment and you're late and I'm sauntering in here after 15 minutes. What I would like to have said, but didn't is that was and that's what most of us do. I understand you're really frustrated, but you know what? I had an emergency. She was in a limbic state. She wouldn't have heard anything about my emergency.
So
she
you didn't apologize?
No, I didn't need to. Right. So here's what happened. It didn't end there because the next day I came back to that school. And of course, who's the first person I see? This person. She came up to me and she apologized to me. She said, I couldn't sleep last night because, and she was swearing at me and everything. Like she was vile, actually. She was horrible. And she said, I couldn't sleep all night. And you were so poised and you were so understanding. And I was horrible to you. And I was thinking like, I'm sure you didn't just block the car for no reason. And then I got to say, well, actually, right. And now we had a beautiful moment. Now we have that's how change happens. We think this changes. This does not change anything, right? This just makes more fear. It makes more distrust. That was a huge moment for her and it was a huge moment for me. Is this easy? Absolutely not. It's the last thing you're going to feel like doing. It is a completely counterintuitive technique. It totally is. And in the moment, you won't always have what you think might be satisfaction, but you will never get satisfaction from making someone cry or making someone feel terrible or making someone feel guilty. That will never give you what you think it's going to give you. It will just make you go off the road. Right?
Let's do a bit of role play,
Sure.
or dive into some more examples, because one of the things I've heard steadily from leaders, it's been building over time, but COVID just threw a bomb into it. It's like, we live in this hyper polarized, divided era.
Mm-hmm.
There are divisions on the team. Somebody's pro-vaccine, someone's anti-vaccine, pro-mask, anti-vax, open, closed, lockdown, no lockdown, politics, and so nobody wants to
everything is
open
polarized.
Everything's polarized. Nobody wants to open their email anymore. And, you've got to lead these people through meetings. You got to deal with clients who have viewpoints. You got congregational members who are threatening to leave if you do this, and then another group threatening to leave if you don't do that. When you're dealing with that kind of dynamic, which is sadly almost a daily occurrence these days for a lot of leaders in almost every context, how would the Comm approach work in dealing with some of those, that irate mailbag, so to speak, that is unfortunately leadership today?
It is a superpower. I don't know how else to word it. It will give you the tools to handle any situation, any polarity, and do it with grace and do it with heart, and actually have most people leave learning something really important.
Okay.
Yeah. You're going to say something.
Can I give you a role play?
Yes.
To try out.
Yes.
Okay. You're the leader. I'm super angry because you said that everybody should go get a vaccine, and I'm an anti-vaxxer, and I think that's completely irresponsible of you. And why would you ever suggest that or post a picture of you getting a vaccine? And so I'm so upset. I'm going to withhold my giving. I'm going to, take my business somewhere else, but I'm going to chew a piece off of you before I do that.
Okay.
What
Perfect.
happened?
All right. So let's unpack this, and then we'll do the technique, and we'll do it the way most people would do it first. And then we'll try the Comm Technique, and we'll see the difference. So a few things we have to just understand first. Everyone is polarized. Families are polarized. Kids are polarized. Teenagers and parents are polarized. Humans are, it's just who we are. It's how I don't know how else to put it. We're built this way. Right. And as we lock down, we become further and further. So really good example of this would be parents, right? Usually one parent is like, you know what? It's not his fault. He's tired. He needs extra sleep. And the other person's like, this is ridiculous. This kid needs some rules, right? And then the softer parent.
Welcome to my marriage.
Welcome to everybody's marriage. So the truth is, then you end up compensating for what you believe is a weakness in the other person's approach. And now you have to be soft because the other one's too hard. And the other one has to be hard because the other one's too soft. And do you see how that happens? It happens everywhere.
Right.
Everywhere in life, right? So integration and mirroring is really about balance. And it's not about agreeing. It's about getting. Okay, so this is very key. Now, there are different things that people tend to hold dear. So many people, it will be sovereignty, their freedom, their independence. You can't tell me what to do. You can't box me in. That'll be a primary thing that they feel all throughout their life, and they will conflict with people over that. You'll have other people where it's all about safety. Safety. Right. It's like, are we safe? So what's interesting about the vaccination thing is both people are actually on the same side, right? We want to be safe. The people who want the vaccine want to be safe because they want to have the vaccine, and they think that's their way to safety. The person who's an anti-vaxxer wants people to be safe because there might be microchips in it, or there might be, things are in it that aren't tested properly, and this is new technology, and who knows where they're coming from, but that's going to be their belief that it has to do with safety, right? So you're going to have two very polar sides, both interested in safety. So that's where you start, right? You start with where they both find where the balance is, where the integration is. So now, there's no right or wrong. It's just how people are. So let's do the scenario. Let's do the thing. And I will say that you're going to be the person who's the staff, right? I'm going to be
I get to be angry, right?
Okay. All right. So
I get to be angry, and I'm having this in person with you. And let's pick a church scenario, because I talk to a lot of church leaders. I'm at the service. I pull you aside after. I'm like, I saw that, vaccine picture you had on. You're encouraging people to get a vaccine. I'm totally opposed. I can't believe you've been duped by, the people in charge of the world conspiracy. And now, you're leading people to, and I'm leaving. I'm probably leaving unless you retract. Right. I'm probably leaving.
Okay,
and
perfect. So let's do it first in a way that I think most people would do it. The average person would do it. And the other thing too about this particular issue is people get very polarized and they get very intense, right? So they truly believe, like, how could you be doing this?
I'm almost sticking my finger into your shoulder, right?
Yeah, but they want people to be safe. How can you not see that this is happening, right? This is dangerous what you're doing. So they're already very, very limbic, as are the people who believe, how can you not get a vaccine? You're putting people at risk. You're going to kill someone's grandmother if you don't have your vaccine. Like, everybody is intense, but they're basically on the same side, right? They just don't know it. So let's do this. I'll be anybody. I'll be the pastor, and I am going to respond the way I think most people would. Okay. And then we're going to do it again. And I want you to see how the Comm Technique plays out. Okay. So, all right. So you're pulling me aside. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm really angry. I saw your post on Instagram. You posted that you got the vaccine. I think that's a misuse of your office. You're completely off base. I've followed you for a long time, but I'm losing confidence that you have the ability to lead this. And frankly, a lot of people agree with me. And I'm mad, and like, you need to either stop or I'm gone.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and obviously you're very frustrated, and I know that you're having a really hard time with that, but I really just felt like it was important for the parishioners to see me getting my vaccine, and you don't have to get your vaccine. It's not about other people. So I just thought it was a really important message. I'm not mirroring here, by the way. I'm just being
but that's your platform. That's your, like, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to make people like me feel like I'm second class.
Well, and I certainly didn't mean to make you feel second class. I mean, you have but
you did. Right. That's what you did with your platform.
I understand that made you very angry. So what's happening here? Anything?
Oh yeah, I'm getting madder, and you're defensive, and
I'm not even
and I've
yelling.
been in those situations.
I'm being pretty calm, but none of that is working for you. So physiologically, and this is a role play, which is so interesting because the midbrain doesn't know it's a role play. That's what's so fascinating. It thinks it's real. The frontal lobe knows it's a role play.
I'm like, ooh, that was pretty good, Carey. Maybe you should get into acting.
But you don't have to, because here's what's happening. Everything I'm saying, no matter how gentle, was making you feel what?
Unheard, unvalued. It's funny because I got the vaccine, so I'm playing the other role. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and the more I try to explain myself, the more I get defensive, the more I try to explain why I did it, the more the conversation continues. And you can see how this would play out with kids, teenagers. You can see how this will play out with work or colleagues, right? So it would continue to escalate. And you would walk away.
I was going to say, as we're doing this in this 30-second role play, I'm like, this does not end well. Like, there's no good answer here. Like, I'm leaving, or we're upset, or there's a big blow up, and there might be an apology later. But there's no easy answer here. And unfortunately, this is a reality.
And they'll go off and find other people that think like them and talk about how horrible you are. And now you have a whole growing thing. That, what do I do with that? And that happens in offices all the time, right? People will give you a very different response to your face. Then they go into their offices and start a whole counter revolution, right?
Politics, silos, and turf wars.
That's right. So let's try this again. And I'm gonna do the Comm Technique. I'm gonna be present. So before I even tell you this, you want to center yourself. You can tell when the person's coming up to you. Oh boy, here we go.
Here he comes. Right? I got his email. He said he was going to talk to me.
Right. So at that very moment, you want to be very aware that your safety program is going to want to run, but it's not going to. It won't do well by you unless there's a lion coming at you. Then it will. Okay, if it's a person, it's not going to work. Okay, so you're going to drop your tongue. You're going to drop your tongue in the bottom. If you just relax your tongue against the bottom of your teeth, can you feel what happens in your stomach?
It relaxes.
You relax. If there's a lion coming at me,
at the bottom of your teeth.
Just relax your tongue and let your tongue go soft on your bottom teeth. And your stomach will let go. Now, what happens is, if a lion is coming at you, you're going to tighten up because you're going to want to protect all of these internal organs. You're going to have a huge breath in because you're going to want to have a surge of oxygen and energy to fight back, to run, to hide. But now it's your parishioner coming at you, not a lion, okay?
Yeah, well, same thing some days. Yeah.
first thing you're going to do is you're going to give your brain a signal. This is not a dangerous situation. It might be unpleasant. It might not be fun. Conflicts are not fun, although some people very much enjoy conflicts, which is another thing. Remind me to talk about that, because sometimes super bright people actually enjoy conflict, but they don't realize that other people don't. But we'll come back to that. All right. So now I drop my tongue, I relax, and I change my breathing. Now, here's the thing. Everyone says, take a deep breath. Don't take a deep breath. That's the opposite of what you should do. Take a deep breath if there's a lion coming at you. So you have lots of oxygen. Okay. If someone's coming at you and it's not a lion, you breathe out. What do you do if you think you dropped your cell phone in the toilet, or you just got a piece of, good news and you thought something was going to be terrible? You go, oh, that's a signal to the brain. I'm not in danger. Okay. So that's how you turn off this programming we're talking about, 7-year-old programming. Okay. And there's a billion other things I can teach you, but those are 2 really good ones. All right. So now you've done that. I've now done that. I've now centered myself and I see my parishioner coming at me. Let's try this again. So come at me again.
Okay. Well, now you got me relaxed. So, okay. I've got to play the role.
Conjure up your angry
Jennifer, I am so upset. I saw that thing on Instagram. I don't know why you would post about vaccines. I mean, don't you know that's part of some global conspiracy?
Oh my gosh,
I'm pretty sure the Bible speaks against it. And you know what? Like, it's just part of that. Like, it's just.
So you felt like I did something incredibly irresponsible. I put a piece of information out there that went against everything you believe, and actually you feel like is putting people in danger. Okay. So tell me more about that. Like, tell me about that.
Well, yeah, you're right. I do. I just felt like, you're the leader. People look up to you. And if you say something like that, they're going to all want to go get vaccinated, and that puts them in danger. And,
So my vaccine actually told a whole bunch of people to go and get vaccinated, like as my word saying that you should.
Well, I guess, no, maybe you didn't say that, but that's how I read it.
Well, and you know what, for you, like I can see how important this is to you. Like you really believe these are untested, that you're not getting the vaccine yourself, and that my word is super powerful and really made people maybe take an action based on what I was saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, now we can move into, we can talk about what happens next.
I feel that in my body. I feel the difference.
You do, because oxytocin, endorphins, and natural opiates flooded through the body and told your brain there was no threat. That's exactly what happened. That's why I'm telling you, it is a superpower. Now,
I think I'm going to play that back like 17 times just to memorize the technique, because you didn't apologize, which is what there's so many fake stories in leadership.
Yeah. And
there's so many, I'm sorry.
Are sorry. If you really are sorry, then say sorry. But if you're not sorry, then just hear them. Right. And you can, that's very powerful. So you could feel, and again, because it's a role play, your frontal lobe knows that, but your body didn't. So your body was completely biochemically calmed down. Now we're having a conversation, not a confrontation. Now we can hear each other, right? Is this easy? Absolutely not. This is quite a complicated thing, and it's not as easy as just hearing it. You have to practice it. You have to practice it with everybody you come into contact with. You have to center yourself, and you have to line up with love and understand that you need to connect in that moment to what that person is feeling. People don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel, right? So now we're having a conversation. So people always say to me, okay, well, then what? Well, now you can start to talk about what could be done differently. Are there other messages? Can you see, maybe they'll come to the understand that, yeah, I understand why you had to do that. I do understand. I just don't like it. Can we have a forum about it? Can we have a conversation? This is such a good example of how in our messy human world, we have to find commonality, right? So then where I would probably go is, so you're really interested about safety. You want people to feel safe and not have these vaccines that you think are untested. And then my idea was I would keep people safe by having them get this vaccine. So interesting how we both want the same thing, right? We both want safety. So now
most rational people will respond to that and go, okay, we're two reasonable people who have different opinions on that. And I have found that, okay, there are some people who may be unbalanced. There might be some people who, as you say, I'm bringing you back to it, love conflict. It's like, actually, Jennifer, I just came for a fight today. So, I'm going to keep swinging if you de-escalate. Now, what if you have someone who just loves conflict?
Honestly, it's still a superpower. Like it really is. You can absolutely, if you stay with this, you will give them nothing to fight back against and they will go away. I remember doing a workshop years ago on this technique, and it was a group of organizations, mental health organizations. And I did my whole thing and people were all into it. It was great. And at the very end, someone stood up and they worked for some organization where I don't remember what it was. It was for homeless people or something. And they get into lots of confrontations and they were really believed that this wasn't going to work. And so they got up in front of a crowd of about 1,000 people and they're having an argument with me. Right? This is ridiculous and it's just going to make us weak. And you have no idea how this wouldn't work with our population and blah, 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 blah. And I basically said, so you sat, and it's a waste of time. I just wasted an hour and a half of my time. And I did, you know what? So you sat here this entire time hearing about a technique that is completely not useful to you, that you don't think could calm the person down. And as I'm doing this, the person is completely calming down. Now, people thought this was a plant. He wanted to embarrass me. He wanted to, right? He wanted to just, he was angry. He wanted to just have his moment. And I totally respect that. And there's lots of reasons why he came in that place. And he probably believed, I don't know, that this was putting false hopes into people and this isn't going to work and whatever. The only thing I could do was do the technique on him. He fully calmed down. He came back to me later and said, I get it. I was like, wow. Okay. And people thought it was a plant. It was not a plant. Trust me, I would not do that to myself. But are there times when the person absolutely cognitive, emotionally, they're in a vortex, they can't do it? Of course there are. And there might be situations where you have to call for help and call the police and God knows what. But
you're dealing with 1 or 2% then, not 90%.
Tiny percentage. I'll give you a couple more examples because people really kind of need to feel this. I remember doing a workshop for a pretty large group of people, and I was telling the story of when I blocked the teacher in.
Right.
And as I finished this story, this guy stood up and said, "Oh my God, you have to hear this." And he stands up and he says he was on the phone with his wife because he had blocked her car in, taken the subway and come to this talk that I was doing. And she's on the phone going, "You idiot, you blocked my car in and you did that last week. How am I supposed to get to work now? Blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Oh my God, I totally did that to you. And I did it last week." Like he completely mirrored to her. Within seconds, she was like, "Honey, it's okay. Honey, these things happen. Don't you worry. You enjoy your conference. I don't want to do this to you." Totally changed. And he had literally just heard me tell the story. So it is so powerful. I can remember the first time that someone mirrored to me. It was Faye Mishna. She was my supervisor at Integra, an agency that I was working at. She's now the Dean of Social Work at U of T. Brilliant, brilliant woman. I had been a student at this agency where I was doing my internship. There was another student there who had already been doing this for a year at a similar agency. So she was clearly ahead of me. She had more experience. She was just on top of things. And I was just twisted into shape that they liked her better and they didn't like me. And when you set that intention, when you kind of see things that way, the brain has a part of it called the reticular activation system, where it basically tags things just like a computer, right? So it tags your different beliefs. So my belief was they don't like me, they like her. They're grooming her to be this great therapist and they're ignoring me. Okay. And so guess what I saw all day long? All the times when they paid attention to her, they probably were paying attention to me just as much, but I didn't tag that. Okay. It was happening, but I couldn't tag it. So one of the things that I did was I was late for about a week and a half. I was mad. And I'd come in like 10 minutes late, 20 minutes late. Ridiculous. It was stupid. It was just dumb. And finally, after about a week and a half, I come off the elevator and Faye is waiting for me. And she said, "Jennifer, can you come to my office? I want to have a conversation with you." And as we're walking down the hall, my heart is pounding and I'm going to tell her that they ignore me and what kind of a place only pays attention to one of their students and not the other. And they gave her a big, tall, beautiful mug for Christmas. And I got a stubby little brown mug. Who does that? And I'm, working myself up as I get into her office. I sit down and this is what Faye says to me. She says, "I can't help but wonder if we are just blowing it as an agency. And you're not getting something that you need, and you're trying to tell me by being late." First of all, who talks to someone like that? I almost fell off my door. I expected her to say, which she very well should have in many respects, and certainly in the in the regular world, this is unacceptable. You're a master's level student. I'm going to have to talk to your supervisor about this. Like, how do you think, what message are you sending? Blah, blah, blah. And she would have been right. But behavior is never the problem. Behavior is a symptom of the problem. And Faye knew that. And she chose what she calls, and I love, ruthless compassion. Ruthless compassion. Right? So that's what she chose in that moment. And in that moment, I felt deeply understood, deeply heard. Oxytocin, is now inhibiting and bringing down the cortisol levels, the adrenaline levels. My serotonin levels are going up. My oxytocin levels are going up. And now I burst into tears. Maybe I just suck. I don't know if I'm any good at this. Now all the vulnerability could come out. Now Faye could lead me, right? Now we can have a conversation about what that behavior meant. What was I trying to tell her? And what did I need? And the truth is that moment taught me that is how you inspire people. That is how you change people. I wanted to go then and do the best job I could ever do for that agency after that. Nothing could have made me want to do that.
That's a powerful story.
Right?
Can you, because I've heard you do this in different interviews, but can you share a little bit of the parenting application? Because we do have a lot of parents listening, and I know that's what you spend a lot of time doing, but just give us a little window, because we all try to lead at work, then we come home and like the kids are driving us nuts, or something isn't right at home, or we blocked our spouse in and she's mad at us, right? So what talk about it in a domestic setting.
Well, so here's the good news. It can work at home. Here's the bad news. It's way easier to do at work. No matter what your work situation is, it's way easier to do than it is at home. The closer the person is to you, the more triggering and the harder it is. So you can do it to someone else's kid. You can do it to a nephew. Really much more harder to do it with your own child, and really hard to do with your spouse. That's the truth. Should you do it? Absolutely. Is it the greatest gift you could give your child? No question. But it really is important. So that's the first thing that I wanted to just say there. The other thing that happens, especially, and this is especially true for leaders and CEOs, people are asking them questions all day. They're responsible for everyone all day long. They're holding the big picture in their head and their heart all day long. And when they come home and you just ask someone to unload the dishwasher and they're like, no, you're mean or whatever. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? Right? So before I even answer this, I want to make sure that everyone hears that not only is this powerful to do with your kids, but before you come in the door, take 10, 15 minutes, sit in the car, go for a drive, take the long way home, do something else before you come in the door. Because when you come in the door, your children need you. They need you present. They need to be seen. Often what we do is just a minute. I got to answer something. I'm just let me get my head together before right? And you're barraged at the door, right? Take that time outside. Get yourself together, breathe, drop your tongue, think about baby pictures of your kids, do whatever you can to get yourself in a place. So when you open that door, you are present, right? That's really important. Then with the Comm Technique, there's two things that I want the parent part of your brain to hear. One, I don't want you to go, oh, I can't wait for my kid to be upset so I can use this amazing technique. I want you to think about it as a philosophy, as a way that you interact with all humans, not just your kids, right? So that you're constantly trying to do this. And when you blow it, because we all blow it, you need to go back and you need to do a repair. Do you remember yesterday when I told you to go live with the neighbors? I didn't even stop and think about how upsetting that was when I was telling you to do this and you wanted to do that. You see? Now you're going to be, and constantly what's so important, this is also important for leadership though, with your team, with your staff, because this will all get filtered down. The more emotional safety and psychological safety people have, the more invested and the more here and now chemicals are flowing at work, the more that's going to flow outside of work, all to everyone at work, but also
a whole life
outside
approach.
Of work.
Yeah.
There is, because, and then you're going to have people being more productive. You're going to have people missing less days. Because as you parent them this way at work, right, they're going to go home and go, oh, that felt good. I'm going to do that with my kids. So this is the messiness, but also the wonderfulness of all of this, right? That it's like dropping a pebble in the water and the rings just go out and out and out. Be that person in your world that inspires other people to go and do that for other people. This is how we're going to change the planet. This is how we're going to do it. One household, one company, one business at a time, right? This is no small thing. So as you do this with your kids, it builds emotional resilience, emotional organization, and integration. So now your own kids, and I know you have them tutored and you've got them in all these wonderful programs and you want them to be in great schools and you want the next to food and water, oxytocin. That's what builds a good brain. That's what builds a strong brain and a resistant brain to addiction. That's the primary thing that actually fights addiction. It's connection. Connection.
So take us into let's pick a middle school teenage scenario where there's conflict with the teen. What are some of the ways you've seen? And again, just remind us, CALM. So it starts with?
So it starts with connect. So I didn't even do this. So this is the connecting part. You're going to take your agenda. Are you kidding me? I had one job that I wanted to do. Are you kidding me? You can't do one thing that I ask you.
Right. So we'll use the dishwasher thing. I may have done that as a parent. All right. I may have flown off the handle. I use it as an example all the time in my talks. It's like your 8-year-old didn't unload the dishwasher and, you reacted a 12 out of 10 and it's really a 3 out of 10, but it's like, what is wrong with you? And every other kid helps out around the house and you're lazy and you're, it's not hard to go down that road. So let's go through that. So you don't react. So you don't react. You do the same thing where you kind of center yourself first. Yelling, which sometimes we do at work, which we shouldn't, but certainly with our kids. I want you to tell you one quick thing about yelling, and then we'll go through the technique. If you are angry and what is coming out of your mouth feels fantastic, you're being a jerk. Okay, it's not good. You're not being nice. You're being mean. You're being a Good definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should feel your own frontal lobe suppressing. Like, okay. Like you should feel your brain actually do the inhibiting. If you are free flow yelling and it feels great, it's wrong. Okay, that's the first thing you have to know. Okay. And the other thing to know about kids, but also everyone, is whenever anyone is being yelled at, reprimanded, sharply spoken to, whatever it is, they may behave after that out of fear to not do that thing again, but it's not going to be a true change. It's not going to be an integral internal change. Okay, that's going to come from having an amazing exchange, feeling like they disappointed you and wanting to fix it. That's where change happens. Fear does not create change. It creates obedience. And that's not the same thing. And that's not what you want in your company, in your world, or in your house. So having said that, got the dishwasher thing. Let's say it's a teenager. You want to grab something. The sink is full of dishes, whatever. You want to cook and you can't. So typically we would come home. And do you want to do the role play? Do you want to be a teenager?
Yeah, sure. I'll be a teenager.
Can you channel your inner 16-year-old? Okay, perfect.
I can do that.
So, all right, we're going to do it the way typically parents would do it first. And then we're going to do it again and you're going to feel the difference. Okay.
Okay.
So, why is the dishwasher not unloaded? We've had this conversation.
I wasn't supposed to do the dishwasher. Wasn't my day.
I told you to do. Do you know how busy my day was? Do you have
No, you didn't tell me.
How hard it?
You didn't tell me.
Don't you tell me I didn't tell you. We had this conversation yesterday. I texted it to you. Look on your phone. You have not. Don't play. You know what?
Oh yeah, I was busy. I was with my friend. Sorry.
You were look at my dogs. They're coming to care for me because they think I'm upset. It's like they're so cute.
Dogs are there to rescue
it's just
you.
a role play. Okay, but and I'm getting more mad.
Good job. Yeah, we've all been in that kitchen, and we've all been that parent.
Yeah, and as the teenager, you're going to get more mad. That's going to go from you didn't tell me to you always do this to
you're
me.
stupid. You're stupid. All right, my friends don't have to do this. Their parents let them do whatever they want.
Exactly. It's going to escalate beyond. Right? Mm-hmm. So if we do this again, I would start with, hey, I know you're busy. And usually they're doing, first of all, if they're even out of their bedrooms, you're in a good place.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Half of them in their rooms on their video games. But you come in and you go, you know what? I know I'm about to say something that's going to aggravate you so much. What? I've had the craziest day and I just wanted a coffee cup and the dishwasher is full. Now what do you want to say?
Okay. Sorry about that, Mom. What's going on?
Okay. Well, I love you and I know you're hearing me and I just really want you to do it. Okay. Do you think you could do it? Could you do it now?
Was it my day to unload the dishwasher?
It was. Yeah. We talked about it yesterday and it would make I know you have a lot to do and you got assignments that you're caught up with. And I know we've had this conversation a million times, but I would so love it if you could just do it. Do you think you could do it now for me?
I could do it now, Mom.
Thank you. It doesn't always go that way.
Does it
Sometimes
usually
it'll
go that
the other way.
easy? How am I going to fight you on that?
How are you going to fight me? So 95% of the time, actually, it goes like that. And then don't stand there watching them do it. That's the mistake a lot of parents make.
You didn't put it away properly. Right.
Yeah. Or 5 minutes goes by and they still haven't done it. And then you come flying in and go, I thought you told me, right? Just leave it for a minute. Give them an opportunity to do it. And when they do it, don't have a parade. Oh my God, you did it. That's so awesome. Thank you. You have no idea how helpful that was. Just go in and go, thank you so much. That was awesome. I really appreciated that, and walk away. Right? The power comes from the realness.
I'm taking notes. Okay, so let's bring this back to work. I mean, I feel like this could be a 3-hour podcast. We'll have to have you back because I had other questions we didn't even get to. Didn't even get to. So we're, when we see that, we kind of understand, okay, we're de-escalating it through using the Comm Technique, and you can pull someone aside. Okay, I've got a question for you. Can you do this via email or text?
Yes.
Or does it have to be, you can actually. Okay. Absolutely. I thought you would have said no.
No, 100% you can. In fact, you have to now, especially in our world. So and it's actually easier because you can sit there for a second, get your inner 7-year-old out of the way, and really craft a beautiful and thoughtful response, right? So it would be, if you can give me a scenario, it would help, but it would be something like, hey, I know you've done this, this, and this, and you're probably looking at it this way, and you were so good about this last week, but, right, it's like you do the mirroring, and then it's like you do the mirroring, and then you present the problem. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So it's not really about, take that out. It's not.
So if I'm, once in a while, every leader gets this. You get, so there's sort of like customers, clients, congregation. There's that where you get the all caps email with no spaces. It could be the vaccine. It could be something you said. It's something they disagreed with, a bad customer experience. So let's take the irate client.
Okay.
Or someone's ready to leave you a 1-star Google review because they went to your restaurant owner, terrible meal, service was bad, food was cold, manager was insensitive. And so I'm, emailing you now to let you know why your restaurant is the worst restaurant ever. And I'm going to leave a 1-star Google review. Okay.
So the first thing you have to know, you will always have those. Even if you have the best restaurant in the world, someone will come in a bad mood and didn't want it to be great. And they're going to give you a 1-star review. Honestly, you cannot, and it's much more about them probably than you. But having said that, there could have been things that fell apart. So what people don't want is they don't want you to blame anyone else. They don't want you to defend and explain why. Well, it's COVID and we have all these, like most people know this, but the truth is they don't want that. They want to be mirrored to. They want you. So I'll give you an exact example. We went out as a family to a restaurant a month ago. It's a memorial of my mom. My mom passed away a year ago, and we couldn't get to her because it's COVID. And it was just part of, she had Alzheimer's, so she'd been unwell for a very long time. And we went to her favorite restaurant here to just have a memorial for her because we can't really do anything else. And we were put in some room and they forgot about our table and there were plates left out on the next table that smelled like fish. Like it was a beautiful restaurant, but just so many things went wrong. And we were irate. And the waiter came by and I forget what his excuse was, I'm sorry to leave you waiting for so long, but I wanted to get a bunch of tables out of the way first so I could really give you good service. So you can imagine how that went over. It's like, really? Okay. You're doing us a favor by making
trying to follow the logic here. I don't see it. Yeah.
It's not going to work. And then the manager came over and explained that it was COVID and there's all these restrictions and they're understaffed and the person was new and they can't keep staff around here because blah, blah, blah. And we're like, what? Like what we really wanted was for him to just take it and own it, right? And say, you came here for a special night. You had a really important thing that you were going to do together as a family. You wanted to honor your mother. We told him we were there. Every single thing went wrong. We have let you down. That's what we needed to hear. And that's what he didn't say, actually. Right? And he didn't need to even apologize. He just needed to say that. Does that make sense?
100%. It's so funny. We're boaters. We live near a lake, and it took 5 weeks for the marina to get me my boat. And they didn't call me once. lots of me chasing them. Oh yeah, we forgot that. Oh yeah, it'll be ready. And then I went to pick it up and like there was a cable they had snapped and they're like, okay, we'll get that fixed. And then they never called back and they never fixed it. So I finally went to pick it up and they were all supposed to detail it. I paid for a detail. They didn't do it. And eventually they started detailing it in the parking lot, like finishing it while I was there. And I've got a manager, I've got a mechanic, and I got a 21-year-old kid. And the 21-year-old kid comes up to me after and he goes, you know what? I was supposed to detail your boat and I didn't do a good job and I own that. And I'm really, really sorry. He says, I apologize for that. So what's your name? And I said, you're the only person at this marina who's apologized to me even once or owned a single thing. I said, if you ever want a job, look me up. Yeah. But you're right. And there was COVID and there was this and they're so busy and it was dirty because they've got a construction site next to them. And all that's true. I still don't have my boat back and I still waited 4 more weeks than I should have. And, I get it. I get it as leaders.
Well, that kid knew exactly what the right thing to do in that moment. And he was probably in brain heart coherence in that moment. Right? And that's why it was so genuine. And that's why it's what you needed. And all you needed from that company is, you know what? It's your boat. You wait all winter for it. The day that you take it out is like unbelievable. And here we've done this and this and this and this wrong. You still don't have your boat. Right? That's all you need. And what happens is when we think that if we explain it away or we don't react to it so much or we have really good reasons why, that we're going to protect ourselves somehow and look better somehow. You don't. When you try to cover it up, you look incompetent, you look afraid, you look all the things you're afraid you're going to look by doing it. Really, you look stronger and more integrated and more impressive and more loving doing it the right way, right? The way that kid did it.
Really, really good, Jennifer. What about people who would say, and I think you've answered this already, but I know it's a freaking objection to your technique. Do people get like too attached to you as a result? Do they become codependent on you because you're like their mom or their dad or, the one person who listened to them? Or does it end up producing just like people who don't care about results? It's like, well, I know she's just going to listen to me and hear me so I can go off the next time. Like, what about those things?
That's a really good question and a very rich question. The answer, and so people ask me all this all the time, especially with parenting. Like, if I do this with my kid, are they just going to rely on it and expect everyone else to do it? The answer is the exact opposite will happen. They will become so much more integrated, so much more confident. They don't need anyone else to do it. Somebody else can yell at them and they're like, I'm loved. I'm good. Right? They will also want to please that person and not in a, I got to make him feel good kind of way, but like, he really had my back. He really got me. I want to make sure I do something really important for him to honor that because I want to be part of this company and I really appreciate the way that I've been dealt with there. Like that, it does not make people weaker. It makes people stronger. First of all, they don't become rely on it because it's so hard. This really should be a 3-hour thing because there's 2 halves to it, right? The connecting part is just the first part. That's how you create safety. That's how you create change. And often that's enough. They go off and do the right thing because you handled it that way. But then you have to come in sometimes and actually make decisions and fire people and replace people and actually call people out on the things that they've done wrong. And that's where those loving limits, especially when they're lined up and they're coming from a place of love, not fear, is they're going to walk away feeling reprimanded and feeling like, well, not reprimanded, that's not the right word, feeling corrected and be like, damn, I got to do a better job next time. I really blew it versus what an you can bleep that out if you want. Yeah. Right. What, I can't believe that. And I'm going to send my resume out. I'm out of here. Like that's what's going to happen. Right. If you do it the other way.
Yep.
So it actually,
we should probably have you back to talk about those limits. Like what happens with, firing, because that is a reality. This is going to solve every single problem you have, but there's probably a better way to do it. Do you find that using these techniques, the mirroring, the Comm Technique, produces better teams and like lower turnover? Do people want to stay longer when they're in that kind of environment?
Not only lower turnover, but better productivity, fewer days off, fewer sick days. People feel like work is a pleasant place to be. They want to be there. You spend more of your life at work than you do at home, right? And the reverse, you're actually a more pleasant person at home too, because you don't have to carry all. And I'm not saying there's not going to be challenges. Of course there is. But when they're handled with self-respect, when they're handled with grace, when they're handled for the right reasons, everybody learns. And even having to fire someone, that's a really good example sometimes of kindness. If you keep some person on who's a disaster, you're not being fair to them. That's not even good for them, let alone your company. And whether they are able to take that and become a student versus a victim, if they can walk away and go, that place is horrible, they were terrible to me, they're going to, guess what? Your next job's going to look exactly the same. I have news for you, right? The same thing's going to happen where you go next, right? If you can leave that job and go, you know what? That sucked, but that was true. Maybe they did this that wasn't okay, but those things I need to own. And when I go to my next job, I'm not going to do that. Well, now you've helped that person. You've helped that person to grow. We learn by being uncomfortable. We learn by being challenged, and we learn by limits, right? So if you're just running around mirroring and you're not actually leading, then yes, people will end up relying on you and trying to get away with things. But that's not being truly integrated. That's not being in brain-heart coherence.
Well, and I think most of us probably have work to do on the front side where we're actually mirroring, we're actually listening rather than defending, explaining, justifying, all of those things. So this has been tremendous. People are going to want to learn more. Where can they find you online? And is there a resource that you recommend for leaders on how to bring this into work and home?
Sure. So you can go to connectedparenting.com. I have tons of information on there. For the parents in the audience, and there's probably a lot of them, I have my podcast, Connected Parenting Podcast. I also have another podcast called the Mental Health Comedy Podcast, which I co-host with Ed Krasnick, where we interview well-known comedians and entertainers about mental health, and we give actual strategies. So that's a great place to learn how to control this amazing brain so that we control our feelings instead of our feelings controlling us. So those are two resources. I have an online parenting courses. For the corporate stuff, I usually just go in and do speaking engagements, or I'll work with teams, or I'll do, workshops with different organizations and consulting. And then I do see, although my caseload is crazy, I will work one-on-one with high-level execs and people on how to bring this to their workplace. And I'll go in and do troubleshooting sometimes when there's a real mess with staff. And it's really about creating a microcosm of the world in your office, right? And when you're able to do that, that moves outward.
Oh, it's so good. I hope we do a round 2 if you're open to it, because I got all these questions. You're an incredible communicator. I do want to know how you get it all done, because I'm familiar with your work and it's rather astounding, to be honest with you. And we can talk about limits and everything next time. Jennifer, thank you so much. It's been a joy.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I hope today's episode was helpful to you. You can always get more by subscribing to my channel. I also have a lot more content over at CareyNieuwhof.com for leaders in business and leaders in churches. And you can get transcripts of this episode there and so much more, plus some other stuff I do for leaders. So head on over there to discover more at CareyNieuwhof.com. And in the meantime, I really hope our time together today has helped you lead like never before.